Hello, everyone. Welcome to our woodland walk for February. And before we have our guest, Sophie Docker, talking about a really, really important topic, moving beyond the story of separation and her work with nonviolent communication and transformative justice, I just wanted to say that it is our admissions month. We are open for applications for ASA. Our next cohort will be starting in April. And we have a early discount until the 3rd of March if you apply before then. We would love to have you. Our community really is a vibrant place of safe pairs of hands, kind-hearted people connecting to ourselves, each other, the web of life. And it really is a safe place, a sanctuary, place to meet like-minded other people and do the great work of reconnecting, the connectedness that's so important right now. That's the theme of my conversation with Sophie, but I just wanted to say, come join us, be with us in ASA. Hope you enjoy our conversation and go to the ASA website to find out more and to apply. See you soon. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our woodland walk for the month of February and the rowan tree. And this month we have the lovely Sophie Docker. Thank you, Sophie, for being with us.
Hello.
And Sophie,
Thank you for having me.
well, I'm very, very glad that you joined me today. And actually, it's the timing feels really perfect because this conversation we're going to be having today is around something that feels so alive in the collective right now. And from listening to podcasts and looking at the work you've done, I just have that real sense that you're working in this area around change making, around how we change. Well, one of the courses that you offer is called Beyond the Story of Separation. And I love that as a title. And you've done work with restorative practice, transformative justice, and you co-direct a charity called Open Edge. And it's all around working with conflict. And the message I really get from listening to you is around how we can come out of the story of right and wrong and learn these and actually learn new tools to help us have a new story and be with each other in a different way. And this is so important for communities, the time we're in when we need to come together in communities. So it's important for us in ASA, but also in the communities we're part of beyond that. So Sophie, thank you so much. And anything you'd like to add to what I just said, please say a bit more about, what you care so most about right now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, lovely to hear your introduction. What do I care most about right now? I think one of the things I care most about is compassion and how, like you mentioned, we get out of this sort of habitual right wrong thinking and into really connecting and valuing with all of life and getting out of this sort of hyper individualized way of hyper individualized competing way of being and really understand ourselves as part of this interdependent living system. So and I think compassion is a way to do that, compassion and connection, which is very much along the lines of the work that you're doing in a slightly different way. And this wonderful thing that actually, when I do feel connected to you or connected to others, this sort of natural willingness to want to give to you arises. I don't have to make it happen. The minute we feel connected, life moves and I want to contribute to your well-being. And for me, that's the most natural thing that I see people doing in all kinds of contexts, sometimes really, complex, painful, difficult conflict situations. And yet there's still this possibility to find connection to the humanity that we share or the life we share and want to give to each other. So I guess what I care about is how do we create those conditions? How do we create the conditions for that aspect of our humanity to emerge?
Beautiful. And feels so important right now, this idea of especially everything that's happening at the moment. And many of our community are in America. And I think it's the polarization everywhere, it feels is really strong right now. And I find myself going into right, wrong thinking a lot. So when you talk about the conditions for that more compassionate way, that more understanding way,
Yeah.
I suppose really you talk as well about the idea that it comes down to needs that we're all expressing. I think that's such a powerful idea that you say that whatever anybody's doing, it comes down to them expressing some kind of need. It may be in a way that's really against what you believe in. It may be a really messy way. It may be a harmful way, maybe a violent way of expressing a need. But if you come to that understanding, then it brings that sense of compassion that we're all just doing what we feel we need to do to survive, to be okay, or to thrive. So could you talk a bit about how your work helps you? How do you see creating the conditions for that kind of compassionate, non-judging thinking?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so actually what we didn't mention in the introduction was nonviolent communication is one of the things that underpins the approach that I work with and we work with in the charity I direct. And but it's a sort of systemic version of nonviolent communication. So understanding us individual experience through a systemic lens, understanding ourselves as part of a system. And so, yeah, how do we move towards that? You mentioned sort of learning new skills at the beginning. I think on an individual level, there's some learning, but also some unlearning. It's like we're so habitualized in this certain way of responding to the world that we've inherited and been cultured in. So there's something around becoming aware of what it is we're choosing in any moment. So we're not running on autopilot. So becoming aware and then being able to choose something different, something more connecting, and yet not, not wronging the wronging, as we've said before, that like the judgmental parts of me are there for a reason and they're trying to take care of me and support me. So it's not about sort of not judging for me. It's about how do I understand that's not the only truth or not the ultimate truth, and how can sort of judgment is like fixing things and saying how it is or how I am. So how can I soften that and understand that might be what I think, my brain is telling me how life is, and there's more than I can know or see from where I am right now. Yeah, so there's the individual personal skills and capacities, and then thinking how can we how do we build a culture that supports us to behave in that way, and how do we make kind of systems and processes that support that. So often think about, I was in a car crash a while back where someone didn't know it was a junction and they sort of went straight on into the side of my car, and on the side of the road realized that it was an error on the sat nav and were very, very sorry, but then went home and put in a no fault claim, much to my surprise. And that's because we're in a system that's based on right or wrong. And so you're actually encouraged into that sort of behavior rather than the most natural, beautiful human thing on the side of the road, which was to connect and mourn what had happened. So that's an example of, systems that separate us and systems that encourage us to behave in a certain way rather than to be able to be in our togetherness and shared holding, caretaking all of life.
So it sounds like the work is with individuals and groups, but also with organizations and structural systems to try and to bring this kind of flexibility or humanity into those very rigid right no kind of zero-sum game systems that we're unfortunately beholden to most of our lives.
And in most of the world, at the moment, or certainly everywhere, that this version of sort of colonial capitalism has been exported.
And do you have a sense from your work that organizations or at least structures are beginning to engage with this, and that there is some, okay, tell us.
Yeah, I do. Interestingly, like, I think one thing that's really hopeful is that the way we experience life changes. It's not a fixed and static thing. So the meaning of words change, and the way we relate to life and each other changes. For example, the word pity meant compassion a few hundred years ago, and now it means something very different. And the way I like to think about it is our thinking, certainly sort of in European context, is very much embedded in kind of sort of Greek and Roman kind of ideas of logic and right and wrong and good and bad, and then add in monotheistic religion and you've got good and evil and you've really upped the stakes. And so that lends itself to people needing to agree with each other, because if I'm wrong, I'm excluded. So I need to belong by agreeing with you, and we have to belong through sameness rather than being able to belong in our difference. so that can turn things into sort of very hierarchical and competitive environments, which is what the world was like in most organizations when I was a child, certainly, and growing up. And what I see happening now as the world changes, and this kind of simple linear binary thinking isn't really appropriate to address the current challenges we're facing. And that kind of thinking is making way for something else that's more collaborative and more about being in complexity. And rather than fighting to define the truth, there's your truth and my truth, and how do they both coexist, and what do we want to do together moving forward? And so, you know, seeing organizations, the expectations of leadership have changed. Leaders are now facilitators and using power with people rather than over them. And so seeing a lot of things change. And then we're in the context where there's also a lot more nationalism and sort of authoritarianism emerging. And sometimes I think of that as it's a bit like the sort of immune system of the dominant paradigm kicking in to resist the inevitable change of that's where life is wanting to reconnect to life.
Ooh,
And yeah,
I
go
love that.
forward.
I love that. The idea that the change is happening, which is something that I hold on to a deep, deep hope and belief about, that the shift is happening. So what's kicking in is the response to try and stop that, but it's happening anyway. Mm.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly the experience I have, and also, you know, I do want to check myself sometimes if it's idealistic or naive. And yet there's this, you know, life reaches out for life, wanting to restore connection. That's certainly what I see in nature and in myself, and all over the place. So yeah, there's an inevitability in that, I hope.
And that when we're actually together, looking each other in the eye, like with your car accident, and when you're on the roadside, the human natural response so often is to connect and have that kind of that clear channel. But then things do, I suppose, with you know, kind of things get so kind of corrupted. And at the moment, I suppose, with the way we communicate, it's very easy for the algorithms to further that polarization. But actually, the human response so often is compassion when we see somebody else suffering.
Yeah. Yeah, and so how to stay with that and not get drawn into the sort of polarizing dynamics that certainly I don't find serve me to be in. And we were talking about it just before we came on the call briefly around there's something of actually mirroring the violence that can happen in our responses when it's coming, you know, when I respond in a way that's about wronging people and problematizing humans, and yeah, then I'm in the dynamic. I'm not
Mhm.
creating something else.
And that's such a good reminder. And it's also hard to do because, yeah, I really am finding myself in this right and wrong thinking a lot at the moment. And one of the things you've said before, which really is powerful, is when you recognize that, you can say, okay, this is a tool that I'm using. This is a tool that I've been taught, this right and wrong thinking. This is, I suppose, a tool that we've all grown up with using, part of the culture we've lived in, that kind of survival mechanism. And this is a tool I'm using. And is it working? And it's like right now, is my right and wrong thinking about the political situation that we're in, is my sense of anger at like a them, is my us and theming helping anything? And obviously on a grand scale, is this polarization helping anything? Probably not. Can I choose something different? Yes. And so that for me feels so powerful and potent right now, that there is another choice. And I suppose it comes down to, so how do we do that? And one of the things I've heard you say as well is about how you talked about vipassana meditation, and how when you did that, you felt emotions that were kind of stuck in the body and being able to shift through and work through them. And that you talk about your work with, I suppose, collective, systemic restorative practice, transformative justice, NVC, nonviolent communication, the work that you're doing, which is, I guess, mixing all these elements, that you're looking at how we change stuck feelings, stuck states, stuck trauma in the collective. And I've heard you give an example before of in the same way that you come back to the body, you come back to where is this feeling in the body, where is this stuck, and that through doing that and being able to kind of work through triggered situations with. So could you talk to us a bit more about kind of how you work with that, like really in quite like with some detail, like how you work with those triggered situations, and how if people come to your workshops, they can learn to respond differently in that triggered, heightened moment?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the approach that I work with that comes from nonviolent communication is a needs-based approach, and needs are a wonderful way, as you mentioned earlier, to find that common ground, the place that we are sharing our humanity. So by connecting with how I'm feeling at the moment, how I'm impacted, and then translating into that what is the longing in me, what really matters to me, what do I need right now, it offers a way to unhook from getting into this sort of binary cause and effect dynamic, and then to open up more choice and more power and more freedom to choose something different. So it's quite a neat way through, and it allows us, or it offers a way to really experience the strength of feeling of the pain that there is, the trauma that is trapped in our collective system from all of our, historic systemic things that we've experienced collectively. It offers a way to really meet that and express it in its fullness and its depth without reproducing it and getting into a cycle of violence where I'm focusing on the wrongness of others or blame and punishment. And so sort of by connecting to the needs underneath, sort of thinking about the car crash again. I slightly lost my thread. What was it? Oh yeah, sort of like a need for accountability is a need that often comes up when we're thinking about getting out of right wrong, because why do we want to blame and punish people, or why do I want to blame and punish people? Normally it's because I want accountability for what's happened, and yet so often it doesn't generate accountability. So if accountability is the need, is what I'm longing for, it's like, what's the most effective way to get that? And actually thinking back to that example again, it's like when we're together in the impact and the humanness and the vulnerability, I'm connected to how it is to be you, and you're connected to how it is to be me, and we take accountability naturally. There's something that comes intrinsically rather than it being forced, and that changes me. So yeah, so as you said, it's not to wrong the wronging. It's one way that I can meet life and discern and move through it. And yet, what is it that I'm really looking for? What am I longing for? What are the needs underneath? And a needs-based approach offers a really neat way to then think about, is this working? Is there another way of getting to where I want to go?
It's such
Oh.
a it's such a, I mean, you explained it brilliantly, and it makes me just feel immediately like I want to sign up and do one of your courses. And I'm really happy that we are going to be able to tell people about the courses that you run, because you are offering one online, which is, could you tell us a little bit about the courses that you run? And actually, as well as that, as you're telling us about it, I'd love to know as well as like the actual format of the courses and how people can hear about it. So how long do you feel that it kind of, in terms of seeing that change, so that people can really feel that shift in them, so that they can go into the world with this ability to hear the needs of others, choose a different path, listen to the impact of experiences, listen to other people telling them the impact on them, that subtle but amazing shift? How long do you think? Is it just completely variable, or can you give us a sense of, like, how long it takes for people to learn?
I mean, that's an interesting question, isn't it? I think it's a practice. So I think it's like an awareness discipline and a practice. Like you did mention meditation, it's something similar, right? And we're always practicing something. And there's a lovely the phrase that Daniel Siegel uses. He does relational neurobiology, something like where my attention goes, what is it? Where my attention goes, energy flows and neurons grow, something like that. So our brains are plastic, and we're constantly, they grow and change and through how we use them, and we're always practicing something. So it's a practice, I think, essentially, and about becoming aware of what it is that is going on in any moment, and then being able to make choice. And I think this approach, a needs-based approach, for me is one of the most effective ways of doing that, because you can really access, I don't need to know all the stories of the things that have happened to me. I can recognize what are the needs that keep coming up, what are the longings. I had a lovely experience in a workshop once when I was learning this approach a long time ago, where I got really triggered by something, and the workshop leader said to me, yeah, I can see you really wanted to be seen and understood for what you were contributing in that moment, and you didn't, and it's really upsetting for you. So this longing to be seen and understood, it was like, yes, I'm longing to be seen and understood, that's it. And so immediately I was like, oh yes, there's some kind of empathy, some self-empathy, because I'm getting it, someone else is getting me. And then she said, I wonder if you got left to cry as a baby much. And suddenly my whole body erupted with grief, and there was this like, yes, I know, I knew that from stories, but I knew it in my body in that moment because of how my body responded. And so this kind of idea that I really need to be seen and understood is something that's really important to me, that's come from early childhood, and then, I mean, obviously has led me to do things like this that we're doing now and the work that I do, because that's something that really matters. But I didn't need to have the whole story to be able to access that longing and to do something transformative with it. So it's quite a neat way to address what's living in my body, and what might be, have been inherited through my family line, or through the ways I've been cultured to be a woman in our world. And so I can meet all of these different parts of what's living in me in a transformative way. So there's something that goes sort of beyond the personal, that is what's arising in me is coming through me, but for us all, right? It's for all of life. It's to restore the connection and the flow of energy through relationship somehow. And that's kind of going a bit woo. But yeah. So how long, coming back to your question, which is how long does it take to do something meaningful? I mean, for me, any moment of, I was thinking about a reaction I had to something earlier today, and how I meet that in a different way. And there's so much change that can just happen just through doing that once, and this is all about how I'm meeting life. Am I meeting it as I think it should be, or I want it to be, or comparing it to how I think it might be, or am I able to just really meet it how it is? And actually that comes sort of full round to your topic of grief for this month for me, because when I really do meet life exactly how it is, and there's that gap between how it is and how I'd long for it to be, often there is some grieving or mourning that comes up. There's some sadness that's touched in those moments, and it really bridges the gap between how it is and how I might long for it to be. And through that I can then build capacity to keep showing up in a choiceful way, and not be hijacked by all of the other experiences I might have been through in my life.
I love that, because it's really taking this idea of feeling into our grief. The Rowan tree teaches us what we grieve for, what that teaches about what we love and what we want to protect and stand for. And this idea that really feeling into our grief is, in a way, the first stage to this whole process that you're talking about. It's being able to feel into that grief first. And the longing, you use that word longing to be seen and understood. So much of the Rowan tree is about feeling into our longing, and the tenderness, but also painfulness of that longing. And that if we can go there and be tender with ourselves and each other, that's kind of step one for this journey of choosing a different way, and being able to not go into that, because that right wrong feeling feels, you almost don't need to go into the grief then. It's like you just shut it down. It's like an artificial, almost like a drug that you can take that makes you feel kind of puffed up and immune almost. But feeling
Yeah,
into it kind of hurts, doesn't it? But that's where we need to go.
it hurts, and it's super powerful because it's really congruent with what is. So I often think about, how can I spend as much of my time as possible in indisputable territory? So it's like when I'm blaming someone or blaming myself, or in the sort of game of right wrong, it's disputable, right? We're going to have a debate about, is this true or is it not true? Whereas when I can really connect with what is as it is, and touch that sort of tenderness that you're talking about, it's indisputable. It's true and it's vulnerable, but it's also super powerful. So there's no conflict with other stories of how it might be.
Oh, I love it. Well, I think everyone listening is going to be wanting to know how they can sign up for your courses. So please tell us a bit more. We will put links to your website onto their notes with this, but tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about the course that you have. This is Beyond the Story of Separation, starting in May.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for mentioning it. So there's an online one starting, actually I haven't got the dates to hand, which I should do. There you go. I'm writing and wronging myself again. I'd love to have the dates to hand and I don't. And they are on my website. It's 5 weeks and 2.5 hour sessions where people will get an experience of this kind of needs-based social technology as such, and really sort of experience that shift in framing and consciousness, and getting like looking at what are the tools I can grow to walk myself out of this sort of way of being that I've inherited and internalized, and into something that's what I would say is more aligned to life and compassion, and being part of a living, complex, adaptive living system. So so it's a mixture of really practical, learnable tools as well, like communication tools and ways of meeting conflict and difference, and practices to support the learning and unlearning, so that we can become more aligned to life, or with life.
Amazing. Well, as we're all practicing our feeling into our grief right now in February, we're going to be in June, we'll be looking at forgiveness. That's our Hawthorn tree for June is where we go into forgiveness. So that timing of day is just perfect. We're doing step one, feeling the grief, and I suppose it all happens at the same time. But yeah, I mean, this sounds like a really beautiful thing for people to engage with if they have the time. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And it is, for me, it's all about trying to really build the muscles to live in alignment with our values and what we're longing for, and recognize the places that we're participating in something that isn't that, and feel compassionately hospice them, allow them compassionately decline while we grow something else at the same time.
Oh, and thank you so much for this too, because we're holding an event in a couple of weeks, and I was thinking about kind of as we open, this is an event, it's all about kind of it's called Retreat to Regrow, and it's all about can't even say the word. It's about regulating our nervous systems, co-regulating with others, and coming to a space of safety. Obviously, trees are so good at helping us do that, and thinking about what forests can teach us about community resilience in the face of crisis, and the interconnected web of the mycelium, and how we can be more tree and all of that. And I was thinking about this is an open event, and there may be people with very different political opinions that come, and how will I kind of hold that? And actually, I was really struggling with it, but this conversation with you really almost makes me hope that people will come with all sorts of difference, because it will be a chance for me to practice that muscle that you're talking about of really really being the world that we want in some small way, in those moments, being able to hold the space for all of it, and see the needs, the shared needs, and that we are all connected to each other, all of us, not just some of us.
That's beautiful. And I often think of what we're restoring, or what's restorative, is the curiosity. So it's like actually getting curious about how is it to be you, and that mystery I will never know, and yet the reaching out and the curiosity is the reconnection that we're seeking, and making space for our differences, and having boundaries at the same time, right? It's not a permissive all allowing, but
Yes, there's finding the balance of those two, which is, I suppose, one of the things that your course really helps people do, is find the boundaries, the accountability, the safety, but also the compassion. Oh, well, Sophie Docker, you are amazing. Thank you for the work you're doing in the world. I'm really glad that our community has a chance to hear this little snippet of your work, but also to say to people there is a podcast with Sophie, which is much longer than this. It's the Accidental Gods podcast with Amanda Scott, which I think is incredible podcast episode. So people can search for that. And yeah, and otherwise have a look at your website and join a course.
Thank you. Yes, I've just seen you were saying May. I've just noticed the online one is actually the 14th of April to the 22nd of May, but I will put up some new dates soon as well. So there's lots of opportunities. And there are other wonderful people doing things in a similar vein around the world as well. I feel like this is something that's emergent, right? We're all speaking to the same thing that life is longing for in this moment.
Oh, well, that's a beautiful statement of truth, I think, to end on. And yeah, thank you so much, Sophie. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Well, huge thanks to Sophie for that conversation, which was so enlightening and valuable. And thank you all for listening. And just a reminder that it's Applications Month in ASA. Please go and have a look at our website, learn about what we're doing, learn about how our community works, see if you think it could be for you, and come along to our event, a free event, 15th of March, Retreat to Regrow, What Forests Teach Us About Community Resilience in the Face of Crisis. It's going to be a lovely event with breath work, music meditation, a new tree journey, a new tree video, sharing circles, a really interesting panel. And so yeah, have a look at our website, asaintegration.com, to learn about the event on March the 15th. It's 4 to 7 p.m. UK time. It's free, as I said, and also you can find an application form for ASA there. We are open, we are ready for our next cohort, ready for our next group of people that are going to be joining us to do this really important work of connecting to ourselves, to community, and to the living world around us. So see you soon, and thanks for listening.